This is The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. I share stories from real people who have already been through some hard stuff. Why? So that you don't feel alone while you're busy figuring out your own life. Let's do this. Hello, friends. Amy here. My guest today on the show is Emilie Karun. Emilie, are you ready for a fun chat? We start with this question. What is the place that you call home?
I live in Central Illinois.
Fantastic. Love that. So, Central Illinois. All right. I just drove through Illinois. I should know this. So, Eastern Illinois is by the lake. Western Illinois is away from the lake. Where's Central Illinois? It's central.
So like Lake Michigan, and that's northeast Chicago area. So I'm like halfway between St. Louis and Chicago. If you drive a line, I'm pretty much halfway between both of them.
Okay.
So way further south than the
lake.
Chicagoland area.
All right, very good. Clearly, geography is not where I
That's
excel,
okay.
Not what I'm doing
Corn
next.
country.
Oh, corn country. I drove. So yes, my kids are not fans of like driving through like big farmland states. I think it can be very pretty, but like driving through Wisconsin, I was like, if you don't want to drive through farmland, Wisconsin, you maybe that's a lot of farmland. Okay, so next question, getting to know you. Which of these generations describes you? Or silent generation? Probably not. Boomer, probably not. Gen X, Millennial, or Gen Z?
I am a proud Gen Xer, although I'm right on the cusp between Gen X and Millennial, but I fully claim Gen Xer, child of the 80s. Like, I claim it 100%.
Very good. Very good. I love it. That's how I ask people how old they are without asking them how old they are. All right. So today we're going to talk about a time in your life when you made a decision, about raising kids and personal advancement, all of those things. You decided not to just be a stay-at-home mom. I think those are your exact words. Are you ready to talk about that with me, Emilie?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So you shared that you have 4 kids. This conversation is like all about you and not really your family. But I'm going to ask you a little tiny bit to give the audience some perspective so they can get to know you a little bit and all of those things. Give us the age range today of the spread between the oldest and youngest kids.
So my kids are 19, 17, almost 14, and 11. So they're all about 2-ish years apart and 7 between the oldest and the youngest.
All right, very good. So you're still really in the thick of it. Everybody still lives at home.
I am. Yes, even my college student is at a community college, and so
all right,
they're all still under my roof. Yeah,
very good. I have some of my kids were still like in high school at 19, so like I didn't want to assume, did not want to assume. All right, so very good. So let's talk. We're gonna back up time frame wise and talk about like concepts of family and where you were with all of this and all kind of things like this. Before you started having kids, before you had this part of your family, were you a person that had a career, a professional career? You were working outside the home. What was life like then?
Yep. So I've always been like a hard worker, a hustler, worked 3 jobs, put myself through college. I always was great at making money. But I always just thought that I worked at corporate, State Farm corporate headquarters is here in our town. And I worked there for a few years, but I just always just the plan was get married, quit working, be a stay-at-home mom. So I did all of that, but I just could not wait to give it all up and be a mom.
All right. So that was the thing that I was curious about because, not everybody has that. Like not everybody has that desire, like, which is, it can be a thing between women, like stay home or not stay home. But your goal was to have the family and be home with the kids.
Yep.
All right. So very good. Yeah. And let me ask one question about your family, if I can, just to give more perspective on that. Did you have a stay-at-home parent when you were young?
So my mom stayed home till I'm the oldest. I have one younger sister, and my mom stayed home till I was about 3. And she had a moment where she kind of realized like my dad was never going to make any money. So she said, basically, I'm going to have to make the money. And she did. She took our family from $6 an hour to 6 figures and became the breadwinner and really was kind of a model of the opposite of what I wanted. But she I always respected and looked up to her, but she essentially was a working mom, latchkey kids, product of the 80s, come home, kind of fend for yourself generation, speaking of that Gen X. So nope, I did not have a stay-at-home mom in that sense.
And did that tie into, if you know, like, did that connect
Mhm.
to how you thought you made your decision before you were a mom? Like what you were thinking about?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure it did, but I don't think it did. I think it was more this fantasy that I have. I call myself, recovering good girl. And I think that there was just this fantasy about what makes a perfect kind of woman, what makes a perfect mother. And in my naivete, and I just really believed like a woman would give everything up for her kids, stay at home. I had this like fantasy about what it meant about me, about what it meant for the kids, and I just really wanted to be perfect
Okay.
in everything. So that I think more than anything was the driver, is that I just wanted to get it so right.
And so let's talk a little bit more about that. I really would love to get your sense of
Yeah.
where you think that came from because I mean, I think we all have that. Like, I mean, I don't think there's
Yeah.
anybody who escapes from growing up with this without, at least in the United States, without this like pressure that the better you do with the things that are in front of you, the better your life is supposed to turn out, right? Like, get it.
Yeah.
If you get straight A's, then you get invited to the honor society, right? And so, but what are some of the things that might have been driving or influenced, like how you came to this idea that
Mhm.
your path to happiness and happiness and all of the stuff was through being at home and being the perfect mom.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the soup, right? But we really do send a pretty strong message directly and indirectly to women and girls about what their worth is and what makes them valuable. And a lot of that is being a mother, and not only being a mother, being a selfless mother.
Yeah.
That's kind of the epitome of womanhood, and a lot of people would proclaim. And I think for so long, I was just trying to, we grew up without a lot of money from when I was younger. I always kind of felt like I was fighting to fit in, to belong, to prove that I deserved to be picked by the popular girls or to be liked by the guy. I very much, hence the working three jobs. I had to kind of make my own way. I always kind of felt like it was up to me. And there was a promise there, I think. I think it represented a pinnacle of achievement, of self-sacrifice, of arrival in some way, that like if I had that, it meant I had made it in the eyes. I was a perfect woman in some way, in some subconscious way. Like that means I was who I thought I was, or I deserved a good life because I was willing to do what I was supposed to make me good. So I think it was a lot of those things. I also come from a really, even though I only have one sister, I have a huge extended family. My mom has there's eight of them in her family, siblings. I've got 30, 40, 50 cousins on one side. So I spent a lot of time just in big, loud families. So I always knew I wanted a big family. And it just seemed like the best thing to do. I also come from a very Catholic family, priests in my family. So there was a lot of that as well, a woman's place in all of that. So there's a lot of things, but I think combination of those.
So what I'm hearing, and you can jump in and tell me where it is, and I'm curious. There's a bunch of sort of little things that I'll sort of dig down a little deeper in here and see what comes up. I do think that it was a very omnipresent message in the 80s and early
Yeah.
90s of perfection, of all of those things, of sort of the weird message that was at that time that was like lean in corporate, but also you've made it if you don't have to work, if somebody will support you
Mhm.
and you stay home. I don't
Mhm.
know whether or not any of your children are girls. I don't know whether or not you think that people are still getting that message. And I wonder if you, I mean, I still know because my kids are a little older.
Yeah.
Um, and I wonder if you remember any of the things you mentioned, that you have a Catholic family, you mentioned you have a big family. I wonder if you remember any of the places that you distinctly remember seeing that sort of like, this is where I want to, this is the person I
Mhm.
want to be. Was it the PTA mom? Was it the mom that threw the, what were those things? And do you think that people are still hearing this message?
I think I grew up like I said, big family, but also very, very, my parents were born and raised Southside Chicago, and they moved to the country along with all of my aunts and uncles and cousins to kind of create a different life. So I grew up kind
Okay.
of a wild, feral, like woods kid. And I don't think that in those early years, I was really thinking about a lot of that. But as I started to get older and started going into junior high and high school and started seeing people and other families that seemed to have what we didn't. None of us had a lot of money. I mean, we're talking like, government cheese and Snapline. I mean, I remember all of those things. And it was fine. It was just a big, happy, wild childhood. But there came this point where I think at that inflection point, we were trying to find out who you are in the world. And there was these legions of, I guess we call them, popular girls. And my little rural school that had 30 kids in the entire school closed. And when I was in fifth grade, and we annexed with like the big 2000s people city, the school that it was like in this huge town, I say jokingly, of 2000 people. And I felt like just a complete fish out of water there. I mean, I remember some of these parents like whipping out a $10 bill from their pocket and giving it to at a volleyball game to go to the concession stands and just being like, what is this other world in which they have these bigger houses and they go, I went to Florida my freshman year of high school as the friend with so I think it was this world where stuff that I had never seen was possible. And it became like, I want whatever this is. And I don't remember if there were stay-at-home moms in the mix of that or not necessarily. I just remember there was this elevated, fancy, successful life that looked nothing like the life I grew up in, where struggle seemed like not a thing, where everybody rose-colored glasses, right? And I'm like, I want this. I want this suburban subdivision, whatever version I had imagined for myself. And so it started a lot of the who do I have to be
Okay.
to get this? Who do I have to be worthy of this? Who do I have to be to kind of outgrow where I came from? And that's a lot of I also grew up in a very good and bad, right and wrong, black and white kind of household. So I always looked through the world of like, what's the right way? There's got to be,
Yeah.
there's a right way and there's a wrong way. I think a lot of that's the Catholic, a lot of that was my father. So it was like, what's the right way? Well, oh, this. And just through a process of choosing one little right thing after the next, I somehow ended up with this idea of what made a perfect woman. And that was what I was going to be.
Okay, I think that explains it. There's a book out there. It's called The Way We Never Were, and it's about the really, really strong picture of suburban life that came out of sort of the late 40s and 50s, which does include that mom at home making cookies for the kids, like the beaver cleaver idea.
Right.
So, yeah. So, and then and now, right, now there's more, more push of like idea of like visions of how we can be everywhere we look. There's more media than there's ever been before. Like there's, wherever you want to see. And so there's different concepts of how we can wrap it up. Do you have daughters? Are any of the four
So my
kids girls?
youngest I have three boys, and my youngest, who's 11, is a girl. Yeah.
Okay, so so now there's all kinds of media out there, like whether you want to be an influencer that's out there doing brand deals, or whether you want to be a trad wife, all of those things. She's too young. We're going to leave her out of that. But do you think the messaging is out there still for people who want to see it, that, there's a version of this that is like the perfect life is to be at home and raise the kids?
I think there's a lot more opinions and there's a lot more options, which in some ways is good because I do think it sort of dilutes the overarching sort of narrative that I felt like I saw.
Yeah.
But I also, like, as someone who now supports and coaches and helps women figure out who they are and what they actually want in a world that sort of tries to sell them every version of happiness that exists, I think there are more options, but there's also, it's the same shit, different decade, different, it's dressed up in different way. It's this idea that if you look like this, act like this, believe like this, live like this, you will be happy. So I
Yeah.
do think the lie perpetuates, but it dresses up differently. And there are more lies to choose from.
So
But I do think it's still there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that's reasonable. Like, sometimes every once in a while, somebody will say, they should have taught this in high school. And I have gotten to the point where I'm far enough away from high school where I would be like, you know what? It's very possible that they were teaching that in high school and I was
Yeah.
gossiping in the back of the room, right? I just
Sure.
didn't see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's definitely fair that like if you zoom out far enough,
Yeah.
there's 100 different options. And yet when we're in the moment, whatever we happen to be focused on as
Yeah.
people, sometimes it feels like the only option for us is one thing. So I appreciate you going down that rabbit hole with me and talking about it, because it's very easy for me to assume that the situation that happened to me when I was coming of age is the same and or different. Like I could pick one for
Mm-hmm.
people coming up
Mm-hmm.
younger than us. And, I have my kids are older than yours. I just try to stay in that curiosity phase. Like, I don't know that I should assume this. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know that I should assume that this has changed or not. Sometimes I get it wrong. All right. So,
To add to that, like just to add one thing, because I think it's
yeah.
important, is I think as long as and I like to think we're getting better at this as a society, although I think it's probably way too slow. But I think as long as we're still teaching and modeling for all kids, but girls especially, to follow someone else instead of themselves, or that they have to be or do or have something, they're going to find someone else to emulate. And maybe that's part of growing up. I mean, we're not going to avoid that entirely, right?
Right.
But I think there's so much we could be doing younger, earlier, to establish young girls' sense of identity and self-esteem, and rooted in things that make them a little more resilient to all of the stuff that's out there.
So let me see if I understand that, because I think
Yeah.
I very much agree with you, right? Like, so
Yeah.
obviously representation is really important,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
Like, so seeing a woman who goes to the moon, or who has the same
Yes.
color hair as
Yeah.
us or whatever, is like really helpful in being able to imagine ourselves, right? Yay, Barbie. And but at the same time, what I hear you saying is that if the only way we teach people about discovery is by look for somebody else and model yourself after them, and we wait until people are, say, 32 before we say, you know what, you've got the answers inside of you, you can rely on yourself.
Yeah.
If we
Right.
wait, like if we could teach that earlier, we might have some
Right.
happier
Well,
people.
and I think, and I'll speak for myself and a lot of the women that I work with and support. It's often driven, for me, it was very much driven by, I didn't feel enough.
Yeah.
I didn't feel cool enough. I didn't feel lovable. I didn't trust myself, because what I wanted was, you can't have that. That's not, no, you can't do this. Like, so when you take a girl and you teach her that she's untrustworthy, that what she wants is, she can't have what she wants unless she's X, Y, and Z, like all of these things that undermine our sense of identity, or who we think we have to be loved, accepted, to get ahead in the world, we will happily trade that girl in for the version we think will get us love, acceptance, and belonging and success. If we can skip all that in a perfect world, then I do think we're going to look to people for inspiration. I do think, obviously, representation is incredible. I think we need to have those conversations. We need people to see themselves in others. But if we're still just looking to belong and feel good, we're going to follow anybody, and then wake up, as I did, many do, down the road, and be like, no, wait a minute.
How
This
did I
isn't
get here?
really what I like.
Yeah.
Not how did I get here? But for me, it was this huge realization of like, I used to say in the early years of motherhood, like, because it's so much harder than anyone tells you, like, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I lost myself in motherhood. But I came to realize later, no, I just never knew myself to begin with.
Okay.
And motherhood will reveal that to you, because it will amplify everything, every insecurity, every fear, every doubt, every place that you don't know yourself or trust yourself. Motherhood will serve that right up to you. And so that's really what happened to me.
Okay, that's very helpful, because I think there are a couple different ways that can happen to people. Like some
Yeah.
people have a pretty strong identity, and then through
Yeah.
overwhelm and just like you said, I mean, it's not that people don't tell us it's hard, motherhood, right? People tell you. It's that you cannot possibly understand what
Yeah.
people are telling you until you actually go through it. Like, I mean, everybody says you're going to be tired, right? Everybody
Yeah,
says
you
the
think
baby doesn't sleep.
practically
Right.
hard. Like you
Yeah.
think, oh, sleep
Right.
diapers, like like physical labor hard. Like I can do hard. I
I
corn
can do it.
detasseled. I bus tables. I was a server. Like
Yes.
I can do hard. No,
Yeah, no,
not even close.
exactly, exactly. I remember
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
somebody was like, make sure you go to movies, make sure you go to movies. And I was like, whatever, it's not going to be that hard, babysitters, whatever. And like, then
Yeah.
fast forward like many, many, many years when I had not seen a movie that was not animated,
Yep.
with
Yep.
it.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, this is what they meant. This
Yeah.
is what and that sort of shifted with the way we watch movies.
Yep.
So it's a weird example, but okay. So very good. So as part of this process, you decide that you want something bigger for yourself.
Yeah.
And for you eventually come to decide to realize or become aware of that part of this is a you getting to know yourself kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you began, I'd love to take you back to that time because you had an identity that you were working towards. And you
Mhm.
believed in it and you chased it and you were making it happen. I would love to take you back to that time when you were becoming aware that there was something else that you wanted and see if you could describe to us like kind of how that felt in that moment, like when you were like, wow, I like this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was just for years there, it was just, newborn, nursing, pregnant, newborn. So for a while, it was like just a complete blur. You're like in survival mode. And I'm not sure exactly how, it was definitely hard. It was definitely overwhelming. And I wanted to do motherhood right, right? So I'm
Hmm.
trying to figure out, should I do this? Should I do that? Of course, I have to breastfeed. Should I make homemade babies? So it just repeats itself, right? The
Yeah.
same bullshit, just new places. So there was a lot of that struggle in figuring things out and just wrestling with this. There was this promise that I had heard, maybe I misheard, was like, if you are this perfect mother, you will have the promise, like happily ever after, right? Like that was the
Yes.
promise. And I'm
Yes.
like, well, what comes after the happily ever after? Because I'm here and it ain't that happy.
The
It's
credits roll, the movie
the
ends.
credits roll. There's no, it's like, well, okay. And I do think back, God, what the hell was I thinking? Like I was gonna be 30 and then just done, like just mom, like there was gonna be nothing ever after. Like I don't know what I was thinking. I just thought that was the pinnacle. You get to married, motherhood, babies, the end.
Yeah.
So I hadn't really thought too much past that point, which was a little like shocking and surprising, like that I hadn't done that. But what really, really started changing everything for me was there was a now she's pretty famous author, speaker, podcaster, Glennon Doyle. Many
Hmm.
women have heard of her. At the time, she was a blogger who was, I don't want to say a nobody, but like she was just a blogger. She wasn't famous. And one of her blog posts called Don't Carpe Diem had gone viral. And that's when I found her back in the RSS days where I would like pin her little blog to my RSS reader so I could get updates every time. And it was the absolute crack that let the light in. In
Okay.
that post, it was basically the first time that someone had said that I had heard someone say, "You're not crazy and you're not doing it wrong. Motherhood is like so hard, and it's okay to feel." First time I had given myself permission to admit to myself, I am floundering. I don't love this. This isn't what I thought it would be. I don't even know where to go from here or what I want. But this woman who is funny and wise and in the trenches too is telling me it's okay. And maybe that's okay. And so that was kind of the start for
Okay.
me.
So I want to just validate a couple of things you said. First of all, I don't think it's crazy that you didn't look forward past
Mhm.
a certain point because I remember being 22, and having somebody ask me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And thinking, well, 5 years ago I was in high school. So I don't
Right.
know,
Who
right?
knows?
Like, I mean, it's like you
Yeah.
just, and our life resets so
Yeah.
often when we're
Yeah.
young. It's like elementary school, middle
Yes.
school, my parents move. It's like, I mean, and we don't, I think that's very, very reasonable. I think it's impossible to not have that perspective. There are people who have it, but I think they're very rare, right? They have
Yeah.
they've done the research. And I think that many of them grow up to be doctors and engineers because that mindset is the what happens in 15 years kind of thing.
Yeah.
But most of us, a lot of us don't. So the other thing that I think that you really hit your head, like really summarized very well there, is that there is a period where, running the family and with small children and the sleep deprivation, it takes up everything. Right. It takes up
Yeah.
everything. And you just kind of blink and you're like, wow, okay. So that I wanted to touch on those and say thank you for sharing that because it can, you're just, you're treading water to stay above
Yeah.
where you are. And it's not until somebody, shows you a reflection of what's going on in your life or you read something and you're like, oh, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. There was
That
one line in particular that just was it was like you're simultaneously like overwhelmed and bored out of your mind at the same time. And I was like
it's,
that for me was like,
I
how
remember
could that be true? But it's so true.
so true. I
I was
remember
so
somebody
bored
telling me, I
and so overwhelmed.
I remember somebody being like, "Yeah, but you're with the kids all day long." And I was like, "Listen,
Yeah.
3-year-olds are not good at conversation. Like, can we please
No.
just talk about this? Like, they keep me
Oh,
busy, but
yeah.
I would
It's
be
mind
eager for
numbing
it,
and
right? I would like a knock
yeah.
knock joke, like, like anything."
Yeah.
Okay, so you read the blog article from Glennon Doyle, who has gone on now. She's written bestseller books. The show, I think her show
Yeah.
is Untamed. And
Yep.
so, who is the first person that you begin to talk to this about? Because this sort of
Mhm.
moms should be happy when they're with their kids and they should not want anything more. Moms should be
Mhm.
happy when they're the PTA mom. Women are only should be happy if they have a world-class career. These identity beliefs within womanhood
Yeah.
sometimes are pitted. They're not really when you get behind the scenes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it
On the
can
surface.
seem like they're different packs of people that are competing with each other. Who's
Yeah.
the first person that you started to talk to about this, and what did they say?
I had these two really good friends that we all got married at the same time. So I had my first baby at 25, or I was married 23, first baby at 25, and we'd all had our first babies like months apart, and then our second babies months apart. And so I had these two really good friends, and I had moved about an hour away, so not super far, but far
Okay.
enough where it was hard. But those two, and they still are my dear friends, that was a place where I don't know that I expressed it in the same way of like, I'm having this realization, but just a place where it was safe to say, we're struggling. This is so hard. They were a really safe place to do that. I also, when I moved about an hour away when my oldest was 2, almost 3, and my second young at the time had just turned 1. So I'd moved to a new town to be closer to my husband's work. And I never really made new friends there.
Right.
And it was kind of on purpose because, and here's I think where I should have started picking up some clues. I just did not like mommy and me stuff. I was like, this isn't for me. And I don't want to make friends with people just because we have kids. I don't want our shared point of entry into this relationship be like, you have a 2-year-old and I have a 2-year-old, let's be friends. I'm like, it wasn't working for me. So I didn't like the mommy and me stuff. I tried to be a PTO mom when my son started kindergarten. I thought I would be this mom. I hated it so much. I didn't want to do it. I also had like babies at home. Nobody talked about that. Like, how do you go be a PTO mom when you have babies at home? So I was like, I had this identity, this version I thought I was going to be, and it just like kept falling
Yeah.
apart. I'm like, this isn't happening. And I thought I'd be, at the playground with all these moms. And I'm like, I don't really like all these moms. And I don't
Yeah.
like, not that they weren't nice, but I just never really, and I think it was just, yeah, I just wasn't like, this is not what I thought. And I don't really have anybody to talk to. And I'm sure I talked to my husband, but mostly it was probably just complaining because I didn't even know how to ask for what I want because I didn't really know what I wanted because I didn't know I was allowed to want something. I thought I just like, I very much had this feeling of, and I wouldn't have used this language, but like, you made your bed, now lie in it.
Yeah.
So, like, this is what it's supposed to be hard because you're doing it right. And like, you can't change anything because if you believe that being a stay-at-home mom is the best thing that a mom can do, then that would mean not being a stay-at-home mom means you're like a shitty mom. So
Yeah.
that's not an option. So there was many years of like shame, guilt, and I don't really know where I go from here.
Yeah, no, I think that's very good. So you're actually an early study based on my timeline. I was much further into my parental journey before I heard somebody, and she was a wife of a coworker, much older than me, and she just threw it out in conversation that she was so thankful when her kid graduated from high school because she didn't have to pretend to be friends with his
Yeah.
parents. And I didn't know her well enough to even make a comment, but I was sitting in the chair and I was like, oh, that's an option because like
Yeah,
I
you
really
do
thought
it.
that I was, and here's the thing, lots of people make their best friends in that way. So it's not,
And there
you
are
know,
wonderful people.
I,
Yes,
yeah,
but
they're all great. Some of them are, I mean, not every, there's no room full of all great people anywhere,
sure,
right? But no,
of
this is
course,
not
yeah.
a, you know, it's like, but it's such a crazy thing. If you, once you're through, once you're past it, right? Like, so when you're in it, you feel like you have to be everybody's friends. That's the only place to find your friends. But that's like crazy that you would take, one, that just the people, just because we have kids the same age,
Right.
that the adults would have anything in common. That's like bananas.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
actually
Except for
bananas.
kids.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to talk about, I mean, I was so starved for something that didn't revolve around my children, to
Yes.
have friendships that were about me and about the
Yes.
other person, and not talking about bedtime. And I think having support and having those friends you can vent with and all of that is really
Oh,
important.
yeah.
But
Yes.
yeah, we're not like, and I do think moving in some ways, I mean, it was hard in others because I was very lonely. Felt very alone, but also it was this permission slip to be like, I'm just, I'm opting out of all of this. I'm just gonna,
Yeah. No, that's
yeah,
very good.
yeah.
And I think that the other thing that you highlighted there, and I don't know if you did it on purpose, but you gave an excellent example of what is sometimes is called a limiting belief, right?
Mhm.
As if you have defined the concept of ideal woman as the person who's happy staying at
Yep.
home, it's a very big deal to turn that around because as long as you're holding on to that one thing, you can't see anything else. It's like the idea itself puts a barrier on what you're going to let yourself see. So I
Yep.
wanted to, because I really struggled figuring out what people were talking about. The first time I heard limiting belief, I was like, I don't get this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you gave a really good example of
I
that.
had
So
a
that's it.
huge, like, I remember the day, and it was so profound for me that I think it might be helpful for someone when I was on a walk and I was thinking about all of these things and kind of in the question of, what do I do? And what do I, even if I wanted, do I want to go back to corporate? Like, what would I even do? I had no idea, but feeling really torn between these beliefs about what makes a good woman and what makes a good mom and what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do. And I just remember having this thought of like, wait a minute, there is no one right way to be a mom. There's just a lot of different people's opinions. And I spend all this time and energy trying to figure out whose opinion to follow. And I'm inevitably someone's gonna disagree with me because I can't please everyone. So maybe I should just decide. Like maybe I can just do what I think is best and that will be okay. And it was just this realization of like, they're all just other people's opinions.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. And it was like lights,
Right. And
birds singing.
But that's pretty good because that's a really relaxed way to happen. Because the other time, sometimes that breakthrough happens is when is like an emergency sense where it's like this thing that everybody's told me I am supposed to be doing is not possible, right? Like, and so therefore, and then you're making that realization under crisis, which it's the same sort of decision. It's the thing you realize. It's like, oh, you know what? Strawberries are healthy unless you're allergic. In which case they're just not. They're just not
Mhm.
like, it's like,
But I'll come
yeah.
back to the thing that makes it so incredibly hard, which was so hard for me, was that I didn't trust myself.
Yes.
Like that's great on paper, but I'm just selfish. But I'm just a bad woman who doesn't appreciate her kids. That's just because it's hard. And maybe if I was better, it wouldn't be so hard. And it's just a me problem.
Right.
It really, so even though I had that initial thought, it took a while, and I started super duper duper small because that was all I could kind of allow myself to do, until I started going even further into my own kind of healing and learning and growing and everything that came after that. But it was like, yeah, I do have my own opinions, but can I trust them? And
Right.
I did not believe that I could. I just believed I was selfish, and I don't know. I mean, I didn't have any
Yeah.
evidence of that, but
But did you get any of the pushback, which is like, I mean, when I was a young mom, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that's like, you're so lucky to be home. I
oh,
wish I could be
yeah,
home with my kids. It's like,
absolutely.
it's the
Yep,
question.
right.
And
Yep,
then, and if you're very silently like, well, I wish I could go to work.
right.
It's like,
Yeah, there's like shame and guilt no matter what option you choose. You can't
there
win as a
really
woman.
is. There really
Yeah,
is. There really is. You
yeah.
said earlier it's like you were following people about how to be a good mom, and
Yep.
I didn't say it then, but I'll say it now. It is There is so much pressure, and it is exactly like you were saying before. It's like there's just a variety of opinions,
Yeah,
and so it's like you have one room where people are like, this is the way we do it, and there's no way to know that if you went across town or if you lived in another country, they do it completely differently. Same
yep,
kind of pressure. So,
totally.
yeah,
Yep,
exactly. All
yep.
right. So, how long ago was it that you started making these changes?
So officially, I mean, this was probably a decade ago that I started really
That's when
thinking
you
about
read the
this. And
article?
that's when well, let me think now. Actually, it was, yeah, probably about 10 years, give or take.
Okay.
And then there was definitely a time of just sitting with that and sort of chewing on things, and my kind of, I said it was a crack of light and just like a little, and then you start, I really believe like in divine breadcrumbs in terms of like when you start thinking about something, then you start seeing something else and you see something else. And so it became a little bit of this opened and my mind opened to this thing, or someone said something over here, and I started shifting myself into possibility, right?
Yeah.
Started imagining a way that didn't feel as restrictive, or as it started opening me up to consider maybe there is something else. Maybe I can be a good mom and take care of it. Maybe, it was like a lot of like maybe what ifs. So that went on for probably a few years of getting more confident in that idea and more open to. And then the question was like, okay, so if I am going to give myself permission to admit this out loud and kind of go for something, then it was a question of, well, what do I want? What next? What is the next move?
All right. So, and today you are a success and life coach. Is that the first thing you went to, or did you
Nope.
get a job at a coffee shop? Like, how did you get there?
So I started in 2018. I just actually it was 2017. I decided I was going to start a blog. So I wanted to do for other women what Glennon Doyle had done for me. I've always been a writer. Since I was a little kid, I loved writing. And it was a super low barrier to entry.
Yep.
On the surface, come to learn like I'm kind of an all or nothing girl. So I spent like over a year deciding I didn't want to mess with Blogger. I needed a WordPress site and I needed to learn web developing and I needed to learn how to start an email list. So I kind of threw myself all in, which is what I tend to do. And I also love it. It gave me something to do. It gave me something to focus on. So I spent a good year kind of figuring out, what do I want to say? What do I want to call it? What am I going to talk about? And on October 31st, Halloween 2018, I officially launched, I called it Once Upon a Wednesday. And it was in the middle of your ordinary life, in the middle of your ordinary kitchen, like stop following the world's rules and write your own, or something like that was the tagline. And I wanted to just write about what I had learned. I wanted to be another Glennon in my own way. And so I started that. And I did that for 3 months consistently every week, got up at 4:30 a.m. before the babies. At the time, my daughter was like 2 years old, I think my youngest. And as an all or nothing person, I always thought like, oh, I'll monetize this someday.
Yeah.
I'll get sponsorship posts, I'll get advertising. But within about 3 months, I was like, yeah, this is going to take forever. I'm never going to make any money. Like I need, this is way too like of a long. And I always had this thought that like, oh, someday maybe I could be a life coach. Like maybe once I build up this audience, it was like a someday dream.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, well, maybe I could just do that now. And I ended up doing this like free webinar thing from this woman who blew my mind. And it just in terms of understanding myself in a way that I hadn't before. And so I bought a course of hers that was like $500. It was like finding your life's purpose. And that blew my mind. And so that really kind of put me on the trajectory of like, yes, I want to do this life coaching thing. And so then I decided to start that business, join a program to teach me how to start the business, how to become a coach, how to grow a business, all of those things. And so 2019, beginning January was when I was like, okay, I'm starting this life coaching business. Thinking like being an entrepreneur is something I could do at nap time,
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, it was, but like anything, a lot harder than I thought. But yeah, that was really when I was like, okay, I am officially a working mom. I mean, of course, all moms are working moms, but that was the first time where it was like, I had skin in the game. I had invested quite a bit of money. I knew I had to, at minimum, like make back my investment. So it was go time.
All right, that's really, I love that because, like, so, we're recording this. This is a podcast and a streaming show. Podcasting is in so many ways what blogging was
Yes,
10 and
it
12
is.
years ago. It's a very
Yeah.
low barrier to entry. It's a way to communicate. I would even say that it might significant. I mean, there's a lot of tech in it, but, and I'm probably going to annoy a lot of people. I would say that it's actually a little bit easier than blogging because you don't have to write. You just have to talk.
Talk. Yeah, I
And
would agree. You don't have to
so
think as much and edit and
yes,
yeah,
and just like everything else, there's,
I need to
you
edit
can
quick.
only
Yeah.
see what other people are doing from the forward facing. You don't see
Yep.
the 25 pieces behind the scenes that have to come
Yeah.
together for it to
Yeah.
actually make some money. And it is the so yes, and sorry, very good. So today, that's so you make the decision, you make the change. How is you make the change to go from more than just being a stay-at-home mom, you go through the certifications. We're going to tell people about what you do more again, but what is life like that's different today? Like what has changed for you as a result of making this question and choice for yourself?
I mean, we don't even have enough time that, but literally everything. I am a completely different person because I'm trying to think of like the most succinct way to say this. I thought I was building a business. I was actually building myself. And everything that I skipped in those teens, 20s, early years of motherhood, I literally got to do when I started my business. I got to find out who I really was, what I really wanted. You want to find all of your deepest, darkest fears, insecurities, your belief systems about everything from money to being picked to everything. Start a business, put it on the internet, show up and see what happens. And so it was the biggest transformational. It was by far it was more of a impact of my personal growth than even becoming a mother, which of course is huge. It completely changed my life because I feel like it is the one thing that I actually found myself through. That wasn't really the plan, but I'm a big believer in when you say yes to your soul leads you exactly to what you need to create the life you actually want, on your terms, if you're willing to trust yourself and follow that one next breadcrumb. You don't see the whole staircase. You don't know where it's taking you. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you need. You don't know what's in your way. And so saying yes to the first thing and then continuing to say yes will change your entire life forever,
Yeah, you had
beyond a
layers.
shadow of
You had layers of that because because life coaching certification is
a.
very introspective.
Mm,
You are
mm.
your own
Oh, yeah, yeah.
first client. Yeah. And then,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
everybody says it really, I like, it doesn't matter much what kind of business it is you're starting, but like asking people to do something for you, taking that time to sell something to somebody else, whether it's widgets or coaching or socks or whatever,
Yep.
it's in every book that I've ever read. It's like it is self-development
Yep.
on like exponentially ratcheted up. So
Oh,
for sure, that's a
yep.
great example. All right. So I mentioned this, I'll say it again. You are a life and success coach and founder of the Good Girl Revolution. So you talked a little bit about that in our conversation, that's a theme of what you work with
Yeah.
people. People can find you at your website, emiliekarun.com. That website link, all of the links we're going to talk about here are in the show notes, the show description. Easiest way to get the links for everybody who's listening is always to be subscribed to the email newsletter because then it comes into your email box. It's super convenient. Trust me. And you have a podcast, which you call the Good Girl Revolution. I guess that's a start and stop kind of thing. You mentioned to me that it's sort of, there's some out there, but maybe it'll come back,
There's a
right?
few episodes. Yep.
All right, very good. And you have a special offer for the people in the audience, which is a Burn the Rule Book 7-day Telegram audio experience. So
Yep.
Telegram is the software, yeah?
Yep. So it's just an audio where
Okay.
every day for 7 days, you're going to get a rule because this has sort of become like the Good Girl Revolution over time, my business, it started with helping moms out of guilt and overwhelm. Then it started helping moms who wanted more than motherhood. Then it started helping moms juggle balancing their dreams and motherhood. Then it was growing and starting your business. And now I really work with women who kind of want it all and are done trying to follow the world's rules to get ahead, who are trying to learn how to know themselves, trust themselves, and lead themselves, because that will lead you to everything you want. So it's kind of just everything that I just shared
Yeah.
now and helping other women. And so we follow these rules of success, we absorb them. And Burn the Rule Book is like, let's look at some of like 7 of the common rules that women believe they have to follow either consciously or subconsciously, and why that's basically bullshit, what belief is underneath that makes it so hard to ignore that rule, like the don't trust yourself one, for example. Like we don't, the rule is basically you're untrustworthy. You can't trust your desires. You can't do what you want. And the belief behind that is I'm untrustworthy. And so it's just an audio kind of unpacking that, explaining it, showing you, opening that awareness. My hope is that it'll be a crack like I got to see like, oh, wait, maybe I need to see this differently. And then it gives you a little reframe and some steps and some things to kind of just start noticing, because awareness is huge, all of the places that your life is not your own. Because as long as you're following somebody else's rule, you're living for them, not for you, which I do think is the root of all women's pain, disconnection, and disempowerment is
Definitely a lot of
not.
it. Definitely a lot of it.
So yeah, it's just a little audio for that.
So I love that. I'll share with you that the origin of this show and the reason it's not called Imperfect Parenting or Imperfect, 20 somethings or midlife is because in my experience, I learned that the ways I was going through transformation in a bunch of different parts of my life, the tools that I was learning and people were offering me, when you drilled down far enough, whether it was training for a marathon, starting a business, finding yourself, dealing with something with a family, they are very, very similar. And that process of getting
running was my gateway drug.
There you go.
Like that,
that
literally.
process of like
It
getting
really
really
did, yeah.
clear, like what's happening, what do I think I might want, what would change, all of that like is, and then so that's like, it's like, so we talk about change and hopefully people can take one thing from one thing and apply it to all different kinds of life. It's obviously not 100% true. Like the learning how to knit is not the same as learning how to make soup, but generally speaking. Okay. So that is a very generous offer. That link will be in the show notes and in the email newsletter. Are you ready to wrap this up with my final questions? I have scenes. Here we go. All right. So here we go. So Emilie, you shared with us the Glennon Doyle article, but share something else with us, something entertaining, right? Because we all, there's recommendations everywhere. We're inundated with information. Personal referral is the way to go. Share with us a movie, a podcast, a book, something that you've read or watched or seen or enjoyed that the rest of us should give a shot.
Okay, well, my favorite podcast by far is Armchair Expert. I'll always give that one a huge shout out because I love it. But I have to say my favorite, Dax Shepard, and Monica Padman, it's so good. But the book that I have recently read that I'm absolutely obsessed with, it might be the best book I've ever read, and I've read like 1,000 books, is Project Hail Mary.
Oh,
you might have seen the movie. Yeah. The movie was good, but the book was so good, like change your life good. I'm really in my I say my old age, I kind of joke, but I think I've read every personal development, spirituality book ever written on the subject of everything from feminism to spiritual, like all of it. And I think fiction's where it's at. We need to get back to fiction. We need to get back to stories, the human spirit. I think we learn more about ourselves in that than we give credit for. So I'm gonna go with piece of fiction.
No, I love that. So, and I've heard, I have only seen the movie. One of the things, I thought it was great. One of the things that I love about it is that people who love the book seem to also really enjoy the movie. And I've heard, for everybody who's like doing this, I've heard that the audiobook is also really good.
Oh,
so yeah, I haven't done it, but I've heard that.
I haven't listened to that. Yeah,
because
I recommend going back and watching the book. Even if my sister saw the movie first, and I was like, "You have to read the book," and she went and read the book, and then saw the movie again, and she's like, "It's even better."
So yeah, that doesn't always happen, right? Like a lot of times, people who love the book hate the movie, or and it's really
it just wasn't enough, right?
Yeah.
Like
that's fair.
Movie
it can't ever be,
but it can't ever be. But it did a good job. But the book made it even, like the relationship was like even better.
Yeah, that's always good, like especially with the ones with big time, like how could the movie is not going to be 11 hours long, although people might like it. But I do think that's my version of I also recommend Project Hail Mary. It was not what I expected, but yeah, I will either read the book or do the audiobook. Okay, next. Okay, I call this segment Unsupervised Online Shopping. What is something that you have purchased online that was really pretty good? Doesn't have to be a big thing, can be a small thing, but something that you've purchased recently that we should all check out.
Oh my God, I'm like panic thinking. Oh my God, I don't know. I buy so much stuff online. I always say I'm not a Pinterest mom, I'm an Amazon mom. So, God, I'm completely blanking though.
Nothing. You do all nothing that comes to mind, but you do your online shopping on Amazon.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber. Okay, I will say this is like so annoying, but I'm like perimenopause, getting into all of my supplements and my
Yep.
fiber and my probiotics. So I bought like a little pill case, and I've been really good about buying and subscribing to all my supplements. And I really feel like that has actually been way more helpful than I would have thought, which is annoyingly so. So I'm gonna go with my little pill case and all my vitamins.
That's very good. I just have the full bottles. Like I also will say, because like supplements, okay, so the Flintstone vitamins is great. Nobody's ever complained about those, right?
Yeah,
But they do, supplements have like you don't know, like people are like expensive pee, and so you
sure.
can really you can really do it. But I mean, I have also I went to my dermatologist. People who have followed me for a long time have totally heard Nutrafol, which is like an expensive set
Yeah.
of perimenopausal
Yep.
vitamins. Right? It's not cheap. But I went to my dermatologist and I was like, so, are these for real? Like, do they do anything? And she pulled them out of her own pocket and was like, I take them.
Oh,
And I was like, all right, sold.
okay.
So,
Yeah.
but I think that that's one of the reasons I ask for these referrals for people, because
Mhm.
you can, you see it online and, you just kind of sort of wonder like, well, is everybody taking magnesium? Does it work for you? And so that's one of the things. So I think that's good. So you have a little pill case and your supplements. That is a good recommendation. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Emilie, for being a wonderful guest today on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was super fun.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Please subscribe wherever you're listening or watching the show. That helps my stats. A request from the bottom of my indie creator heart is to please tell your friends about the show. That is the real way new people discover it. If you feel motivated, I would love it if you rated the show or wrote a review on whatever platform you are using. Please be sure to head over to imperfectadulting.com and sign up for the email community. I call this the Village. You'll get some free stuff right away, and you'll begin to get the weekly emails that I send. This includes the links for special offers from any guests on the show and cool stuff I put together for the community. There's a lot more going on than just this show, and the only way to find out is to get the emails. Plus, you're busy. You don't have time or desire to follow every single tidbit on social media, and you don't have to, because I'm happy to send it to you. If you have a story you'd like to share with the audience, I have an open application for guests. Guess where you'll find it? That's right, on the website and in the emails. And that's a wrap for this episode. Until next time, remember that the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now. I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that just may not mean you're lost. It may mean that you're just on your way. And now, the fine print. The Art of Imperfect Adulting podcast and streaming video show is a copyrighted work created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. The music was written and produced by Todd Thompson at Dharma Bomb Studios. All rights are reserved. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy Stone does not intend to hold myself, herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level. Yeah, it's a little weird for me to talk about myself in the third person, but you get the idea. This is Amy Stone, signing off.